Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome back to my Higurashi When They Cry Let's Play. Today we'll be recording episode 34. So I mentioned this in the comments on episode 32, because I just released that today, actually. But there was a pretty bad audio bug in episode 33. You probably noticed it. I think it's pretty hard not to notice it, given that it lasted for like 30 minutes. I took some steps to hopefully address that, and I just wanted to start with that I've hopefully prevented that from happening again. I've done over an hour of test recordings, and it has not popped back up once yet. Whereas I felt like I kind of noticed it a few times, even in like the videos where it wasn't as prevalent, like episode 32. Maybe I was just imagining things, but there were a few times where I thought I noticed it, right? So I just wanted to address that. That hopefully the audio will be higher quality on this episode. After this one is done recording, I'm going to rewatch the entire thing before I record the next episode. And if there's nothing in this episode, I think we can say with confidence that it's most likely gone. But yeah, if it pops back up again, I do apologize. Like I said, I did take some steps to eliminate it. I kind of had a misconfiguration in my audio settings. I'm not gonna lie. Doesn't really shock me. You don't typically get audio bugs for no reason. But that's enough about the audio. So I guess let's talk about real quick about where we left off in the last episode and what it means for this episode. So in last episode, we got some information from Oishi's informant. And before that, we also learned that Oishi has a direct connection, by the way, to the construction site foreman, which might be relevant. Just something to keep in mind for sure. I really want to keep that one in mind. But we met with the informant, and we got three critical pieces of information, in my opinion. The first piece of information was that they were raising the price of the bulletins, which they're using to fund basically bribes for the mass media. And Kichiro Kimiyoshi was a bit worried that this was going to potentially cause some people within Hinamizawa to like kind of break off a bit. And so I think they might be setting something like that up, right? For some group to kind of be like, all right, this is a little ridiculous, right? Like if this is the price we have to pay, like we can't pay this, right? And so maybe they'll help Akasaka. I don't know. Maybe we'll have some unlikely allies. Or it'll just give us some insight on maybe the people getting targeted are the people who were against that, right, in the first place, right? That bulletin, right? Targeted in the Watsunagashi killings, to be clear. That's what I mean. Maybe that's how they were choosing their targets, at least for a few years. So the second piece of info is the fact that the Sonozaki family and the Onifuchi Guardians in general knew about the kidnapping of the construction minister's grandson. There's no way they should have known about that, so that pretty strongly indicates that either they are responsible for it, or they have some mole who told them about it. It could be somebody within, public safety. It could be Oishi, right? I think there's a real chance they just did it, but still worth noting. And then more notably, and this is why I think it's pretty likely there's a mole, it's the fact that they knew that a public safety officer was coming. And like they knew that in advance. Akasaka's cover was blown before he even got on that bus. And so I think there's a really good chance there's a mole. And I mean, we directly told Oishi both of those things that they shouldn't have known, but they did, right? So I don't know. There's a chance. I'm definitely considering the possibility. But now we know that they know, and so I'm really curious to see how that affects Akasaka's decision making. If he's just gonna like keep powering through and pretending that he doesn't know that they know, and I don't know. Or maybe he goes on more stealth ops. Like I don't really know. But those are three pretty important things, I think. He's probably going to need to report them in here soon, and I'm interested to see how they impact his decision-making while he's here. So let's just go ahead and load right into Chapter 4. I had a restless night's sleep. I did nothing but turn over repeatedly during a night that seemed like it lasted for eternity. Even then, I eventually fell asleep at some point, not realizing how high in the sky the sun had risen. I shook off the urge to go back to sleep. It was then I noticed that the phone was ringing. The time was almost 10:30 in the morning. It was clearly too late for a wake-up call.
Akasaka-san desu ka? Ohayou gozaimasu. Oishi desu.
Good morning, Oishi. What's he calling us for? Waking up to the sound of Oishi's voice was a little too much of a shock. My delicate ears were ringing. But thanks to that shock, I was suddenly wide awake.
どうも。おはようございます。
ひょっとして今お目覚めですか?
Perhaps.
出張中とはいえ勤務時間には起きないといけませんよ。
What hours is it good to be asleep in during during like an assignment like this? I feel like realistically you need to be able to be up at any hour.
まったくです。
But he's not wrong.
以後、気をつけます。
あなたの眠気をもう一つ覚ましてあげられるかもしれない話があります。ひなみ沢駐在所から届いた遺失物に興味深いものが混じっていたんです。
Those bells are usually not something good.
遺失物。
詳しい話はこちらにいらっしゃってからにしましょう。お昼前に来れますか?
いえ、すぐに伺います。
Oishi already knew what my mission was. Since Oishi said it was something that would wake me up, it was hard to believe that it would be irrelevant to me. Honestly speaking, judging by the information from Sato-san yesterday, knowing that my cover was already blown, I couldn't wander to and from Hinamizawa carelessly. In other words, my investigation was at an impasse. If there was some information there that could put me back on the trail, that would be nothing less than a stroke of good fortune. Yeah, true. After vigorously washing my face, I pulled on my jacket and hailed a taxi, heading towards the Okonomiya police station.
おお、来た来た。天才ジャンシ様の到着だ。
遅くなって申し訳ありません。で、一体何が出たんですか?
With absolutely no intention of reminiscing about last night's mahjong game, I pressed him to get to the point. Oishi, anticipating that I would act that way, cut to the chase without any resistance.
先ほども申し上げましたが、今朝、ひなみ沢の駐在所から遺失物が届きました。
Lost items that were turned over to the police box were sent to Okonomiya Station after the paperwork was filled out. Oishi pulled out a plastic bag from a drawer and laid its labeled contents on the desk.
財布ですか?
A wallet.
でしょうな。中には小銭はあってもお札はなかったもんなんで、スリが中身を抜いた後に捨ててったのかななんて思ったんですがね、最初は。
I didn't understand how this wallet, so far removed from Tokyo, could possibly be related to the kidnapping. If it had drawn Oishi's attention, it would have to be something dramatic, like if the wallet belonged to the missing grandchild. That would be absurd. Like something that convenient would happen. If that was it, then there were probably initials written on the wallet, like the initials of Toshiki Inukai, the minister's grandson, T.I. Thinking like that, at this point I didn't suppose that this wallet was something that could get Oishi so excited. Oishi, after putting on a pair of disposable plastic gloves, handed me a pair of the same. I didn't feel that this wallet was such an important thing, so I had my doubts about whether there was any point in putting on gloves. However, I didn't want Oishi's intentions to go to waste, so I put them on. Oishi opened up the plastic bag and pulled it out, showing me the back. As I had imagined, there were initials engraved there. It was slightly more detailed than what I had thought, with Toshiki I marked on it. Oh, Lord. Oishi grinned at me with a look on his face that said, "See? We can't confirm from that this belongs to the minister's grandson," I informed him calmly. This wallet was irrelevant. It was nothing more than Oishi's overeagerness. What? First of all, there was absolutely no way, in this distant locale, that the missing grandson's wallet would be found with such convenient timing. After all, the Onigafuji Guardians wasn't related to the case in the first place. You are coping, bro. Come on, son. He's seeing the proof right in front of him, and he can't. Now, I will say, if there's a real reason to be suspicious of Oishi, maybe it's like forged or something, throwing him off the trail, but like, I don't think that's super likely. I really need to turn off Steam notifications. So there was no way this wallet belonged to the grandson. Why I wanted to decide that was the case, even I didn't really know. Even though what should have been a top-secret case was leaked before I'd even been dispatched. In this situation, how could I say this was definitely unrelated? Would it be more prudent to pay more attention to this wallet? It had only been a couple of days since I arrived in Hinamizawa, but in those couple of days, due to the number of remarkable events, my nerves might have become a little, just a little frayed. Shaking my head slightly, I cleared it of unnecessary thoughts. Oishi opened the wallet's zipper, revealing the contents. Inside was small change and a number of crumbled receipts. Oishi, from that jumble, pulled out a folded card. Seeing that, my heart stopped for a moment. It was a card from a dental examination. The name Toshiki Inukai and the age. A perfect match. The dentist's location was in Tokyo. There's no need to explain any further. How far was it from Tokyo to Hinamizawa? It was far enough that taking the bullet trains and cars would still leave several hours. Why would a wallet with a dental examination card from Tokyo inside show up in Hinamizawa? Could it belong to a tourist who came from Tokyo? Or maybe a villager on vacation to Tokyo just happened to pay a visit to the dentist? No, it had to have fallen into somebody's bag by accident. In my mind, I desperately struggled to find a possible excuse as to why this wallet didn't belong to Toshiki Inukai. It was as if it just wouldn't do for this wallet to belong to him. Bro does not want to believe he actually got assigned to the place, like to the group responsible for this kidnapping. However, weeding out any possibility for error one by one, the haze surrounding the wallet in front of me faded, gradually letting it come into clear focus.
Ne?
I felt a shiver of electricity run up my spine. My pulse quickened and a thin film of sweat began to coat my entire body. From Oishi's point of view, I was probably slack-jawed and spaced out, with a slovenly look on my face.
この歯科には問い合わせましたか？
そりゃ赤坂さんの仕事でしょ。
That is true. This is your investigation, buddy.
私はまだそこまでは。
この財布はいつ頃のものでしょうね。
拾ったのは村人です。昨日のことだそうで。
じゃなくて、この財布はいつ頃落ちたものでしょうね。
ここいらに雨があったのはちょうど先週7日前。中身が水にやられた様子はないから、最長で6日前からでしょうね。
この財布の存在は、署内で誰が知ってます？
初期対応のひなみ沢駐在所の警官。それから遺失物対応で係が2、3人。あとは私とあなた。内緒の事件と関係があったらまずいでしょ。ベラベラとは喋ってないつもりですよ。
電話を借りていいですか？
Well, it needs to contact the dentist, figure out when the appointment was, for example, or if he even showed up.
どうぞどうぞ。外線は0発信から。
I dialed the phone number inscribed on the examination card. I could hear my pulse pounding inside my head. Could there possibly be something so absurd? The addresses on the receipts and cards inside the wallet were all from around the area where the grandson lived. The name on the examination card was also a match. The time we deduced that the wallet had been left behind also matched up with the timeline of the kidnapping. Of course, it was possible I could just laugh it all off as a big pile of coincidences. There wasn't any strong evidence. Rather than all this circumstantial proof, the contents of the phone call I was about to make would have a much greater meaning.
はい、お待たせしました。中川歯科です。
どうも。こちらは沖宮署です。実は、お財布の落とし物がありまして、所有者の連絡先を探しております。ご協力をいただいてもよろしいでしょうか。お財布の中に、そちら様の診察カードが入っておりまして。ええ。氏名は、犬飼俊樹くんです。カードの番号を申し上げますので、電話番号をお調べいただいてもよろしいでしょうか。ええ。ありがとうございます。お願いできますか。
Still holding the receiver, I pulled out a notebook from my breast pocket with my free hand. I opened it up to the page with the grandson's address and phone number recorded on it.
どうもすみません。はい。お願いします。
I compared the phone number written in my notebook to the one that was being read out on the other end of the line. It's going to be a perfect match. During that process, I spun around to look behind me uneasily. I locked eyes with Oishi. Oishi looked puzzled, wondering what the matter was. Why would I feel uneasy and look behind me? That was because the person on the end of the line was reading the numbers as though doing so straight from my notebook. It seemed that HQ was in quite an uproar thanks to my report. No matter how many times the authenticity of the evidence I had linked to the grandson was called into question, I could only respond that it was the truth. When the lead investigator first picked up the phone, I was grilled about the evidence I'd found that was almost too good to be true, if I do say so myself. But after having doubt after doubt dispelled, he fell into silence. The receiver was finally handed over to the section chief. When he picked it up, the background thrum on the other end of the line disappeared, and I knew that it had gone completely silent. After asking the same questions about the wallet that the lead investigator did, the chief quietly spoke his next words, not quickly.
わかりました。こちらから何人か増援を送ります。今日の夕方には到着できるでしょう。赤坂君は引き続き現地調査をお願いします。財布が発見された地域の情報を収集しててください。加納さんは何人か選んで現地へ直接。
Has he mentioned that his cover is blown yet? Is this the song that played when Keiichi snapped? In chapter 3? Like in the classroom. I don't know if it's the exact same song, but it's similar vibes. I like it though. I don't think this is the same song. I'd have to... maybe it is. The fact that he was sending Kano, the lead investigator here, meant that the chief had decided there was a possibility that the Onigafuchi Guardians were somehow implicit in the kidnapping. However, it felt as though until the lead investigator, whom he trusted, had verified the evidence with his own eyes, he was still going to be skeptical about it.
どうでした？
本庁から増援が出発するそうです。私は現地調査を命じられました。財布の落ちていた場所はどこなんです？
It's insane how consistently my videos get interrupted, by the way. Quick little jump cut. I do still remember all the context, but... bruh.
高津戸のあたりだそうです。ここが沖宮。ずーっと行って、ここがひなみ沢。で、さらに上流にぐーっと上がっていくと、この辺が高津戸です。
Oishi explained where the wallet was found by pointing to locations on the map on the wall. This place called Takatsudo was even more remote than Hinamizawa was.
高津戸界隈はほとんど民家なんかありませんよ。昔の廃村です。無人の家屋が点在する、なんとも寂しいあたりですね。
Perfect place to hide somebody.
大石さん、高津戸へ案内してもらうことはできますか？
構いませんよ。赤坂さんお一人では、なかなか自由にひなみ沢に出入りはできないでしょうからね。無論、また野球帽とマスクをしてもらうことになりますが。
Yeah, true. That Oishi had agreed to accompany me was very reassuring. If Sato-san's info was to be believed, my cover had been blown. I wasn't sure if the villagers had realized that the fresh meat dispatched from public safety was the tourist that had visited the village yesterday. In other words, me. But deciding that they hadn't noticed would have been overly optimistic. Yeah, for sure. Given a cursory thought, Takatsudo, where the wallet was found, couldn't be ruled out as a hiding spot for the kidnappers. The Takatsudo area didn't have any residential buildings, nor was it alongside a highway. There wasn't a reason for even the locals to go out of their way to visit it. It was exactly what you would call a long-forgotten ghost town at the end of the road. You couldn't ask for a better place to hold a kidnapped grandson. Also, you couldn't get to Takatsudo without passing through Hinamizawa first. Those several conditions made the area all the more important. I couldn't brush it off any longer. There was no longer any doubt that Onigafuchi Guardians, or somebody hired by them, were involved in the kidnapping. If that was the case, then the fact that this wallet was found might have already been leaked to them. They even knew so much as how the Public Safety Division was operating. The case of the wallet wouldn't be something they didn't know. That's a very good, very, very good call, right? It's good that you read that. In that case, there was a possibility that the enemy was lying in wait. To dive alone into enemy territory surrounded by enemy territory, to say the least, required an amount of courage, nay, recklessness, that I just did not have.
大石さんの動向がなければ、そうおいそれと踏み込めない村でしたので、ご協力いただけて本当に助かりました。正直なところ、またお金を要求されるのではと思ってましたよ。
それは正直を言えば、ひなみ沢なんか好き好んで行きたがないですからね。運賃でも弾んでもらいたい気分ですが。でも、一緒にタコを囲んだ友人の頼みとあれば、断るわけにはいきませんしね。
I'm really focusing on trying to read Oishi because this could be one of those things where it's like if we walk straight into a trap, right? It's like we really might have a reason to be suspicious of Oishi. Oishi grinned as he pounded me on the back. It struck me that he just didn't want to jump ship rather than having any sort of sense of duty towards his job. Even so, that didn't really matter. Right now, I really appreciated the gesture.
では、早速出してもらえますか？
If the enemy knew that the police had obtained the wallet, then they would probably have moved the hostage to a different place. There wasn't a moment to lose, but Oishi, without regard to the fact that we were about to head out, began to remove his jacket.
何をしてるんですか？
まあ用心ですよ。家中の栗を拾うなら相応の用意が必要と思いましてね。
Oh, he put on a vest.
あなたも来ますの。
Oh, he's putting on a vest. What Oishi pulled from the drawer below the desk was a stab-proof vest. He ain't playing. Not gonna help against a Glock, but, you know. His name was Toshiki Inukai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction, Inukai. There's only one reason for him being here. If he didn't include gym or art class, his grades were above average. That was the result of having private tutoring sessions twice a week. If you omitted the fact that he still couldn't do pull-ups, there wasn't much else that would make him hate school. Of course, he understood full well that his grandfather was a cabinet minister. But he also knew that not too many people were that interested in their relationship. He didn't like to go out of his way to bring up his grandfather, or to call him the Minister of Construction. And finally, he at least tried to know a little more about what kind of work the Minister of Construction did than your average Joe. What that entailed was that when you tried your best to make life better for the masses, sometimes you made a few enemies. He knew that all too well from the time he'd spent as class representative. His grandfather had many enemies. He knew that he might personally catch some of that fallout, so he had to be twice as cautious. He was taught that by his parents. That's why, the moment he was kidnapped, he instantly knew that this was one of those occasions. He understood that he wasn't being treated as Toshiki Inukai, the person, but rather as Toshiki Inukai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction. That he wasn't personally at fault, but that this was the result of some unavoidable trouble with his grandfather's work. It made little difference, but when he realized it wasn't because of anything he did, he was able to relax, if only a little. Of course, at first he was struck with the terror befitting his age, wondering what was going to happen to him. But, after a while of being tied up and only able to stay lying down, he began to ponder a great many things. First, he thought about the reason he was being abducted like this. He understood the answer to that easily. He was taken hostage to coerce his grandfather, the minister. There was no doubt about that. He didn't know exactly what the Minister of Construction did, but it was easy to imagine that there was much to be gained from threatening him. He respected his grandfather more than most. He earnestly believed that his own grandfather was within the top 20 of the most important people in Japan. That was exactly why he wouldn't forgive anybody who tried to threaten his beloved grandfather. More importantly, he wouldn't forgive anybody who would use him as a tool to threaten his grandfather. His grandfather was really busy, and rarely had time to meet with relatives. That's why, with what little time he did manage to scrape together, he just dropped by unannounced. And, as an apology for not being able to meet during New Year's or summer vacation, he doted on his grandson very, very much. The number of times that Toshiki was looked upon with disregard just because his grandfather was a politician and a minister certainly weren't few. But he never thought even once that he wanted his grandfather to quit being a politician. Because it was his beloved grandfather. He wanted him to continue his career as long as possible from the bottom of his heart. However, Toshiki was now being held hostage, and his grandfather was being threatened. His grandfather, who called him the apple of his eye, was surely suffering. He might do anything to save his grandson, maybe even putting aside his ideology if it was required to save his grandson. He might cave into the culprit's demands if it meant saving his grandson. When Toshiki thought about that, an inexplicable anger welled up within him. In his current situation, he was unable to forgive the cowards who would make his beloved grandfather suffer by using such dastardly means. That feeling swelled up inside of him, displacing the fear. What he thought of first was something any boy would imagine. Get out of these bonds, beat up the bad guys, then hand them over to the police. Images of all the brave heroes from all the manga he had read passed through the back of his mind. Something's telling me he's not quite going to pull that one off. In his imaginary scenario, he slipped his bonds easily, floating like a butterfly to evade his captors, then stinging like a bee to bring them all down. In the end, it was nothing more than his silly little fantasy. But with his vision obstructed and unable to see anything, it was something that he could get into more than any anime at the moment. In actuality, he was enjoying these little scenarios in his head for the long period of time he was tied up. His captors hadn't really done anything to him that they would feel sorry for. However, eventually he began to grow tired of his fantasies, and more realistic scenarios began to rush through his head. It was then that he realized that none of them were a solution. Yes, he wanted to do something for his grandfather who was being threatened. That he was being held there to inflict pain on his grandfather was the thing that he could least forgive, and also the most vexing. And then he noticed. There was a much simpler way he could save his grandfather without having to beat up his despicable captors. That was, to remove himself as a hostage from the hands of these villains. If he was to disappear from here, his captors would have nothing to threaten his grandfather with. I mean, they could kind of just keep bluffing that they have you, but... The captors had restrained him, but they didn't treat him roughly, and they made sure he was fed well enough. Meaning, at most, he was nothing more than the means for their threat. They weren't looking to bully or kill him out of spite. He behaved, no ill would befall him. Realizing that gave him a strong sense of courage, and carrying his train of thought this far, he let it run its course to its natural conclusion. Right now, at this moment, Toshiki Inukai had decided to escape. His ears had been stuffed with a sponge-like material, acting as makeshift earplugs. However, they didn't actually do much to block out any sound, and he could overhear everything his captors were saying. Realizing that this was to his advantage, even when his captors spoke to him, he acted like he couldn't hear them due to the earplugs. His captors, thinking that he couldn't hear their conversation, talked about all sorts of things without any reservations. Thanks to that, he was able to obtain various pieces of information. First off, this wasn't Tokyo. It seemed as this was quite a distance away, and on top of that in the countryside, nestled deep in the mountains. It also seemed that his captors were inconvenienced living out here, so he could deduce that this place was far removed from any sort of town. Finally, whenever they went out to buy food or other supplies, they would always take a car. That fact caused him some dismay, because he knew that the method he learned at school of running around blindly while shouting for help wouldn't work here. He paused his little mental escape scenario there. Is this going to be like some revelation that he managed to get the wallet, like, into a place where someone could find it? His ultimate goal was to find somebody who would help him. If somebody who fit that description wasn't close by, his chances of escaping successfully grew slim. A desolate, far-off land deep in the mountains, a place where you couldn't even go shopping without using a car. In this situation, escaping would be very difficult. He grew depressed, and after a little while, he returned to his original scenario. Imagining becoming a hero like in the manga he read and beating down his captors became his respite. However, as he played those delusions out in his head, his heart, hating to surrender, continued to search for a way to escape. And then, he thought of a way. If the goal was far away, then all he had to do was get closer. His goal, in a nutshell, was to find somebody who would help him. In other words, somebody other than his captors. If he faked being sick, then his captors would have to take him to the hospital or bring a doctor to him. They would probably be reluctant to do that, but he already knew that the hostage was more important than anything. And the off chance that something happened, like him dying, occurred, they wouldn't be able to threaten anybody anymore. Luckily, he had an experience that would help him fake a serious illness. At the end of last year, he was inadvertently involved in a car accident and had to undergo surgery. The scar from that surgery was still clearly visible on his lower torso. He recalled the pain and suffering from that time. The existence of that experience would make a huge impact on the realism of his performance. He was quite confident in his ability to fake an illness. Okay, so that's his plan right now, fake being ill. His captors at first took that as a sign he needed to use the washroom. Untying only his arms, they tried to bring him there while he was still blindfolded, but he didn't try to get up. His hands, now free, only clutched at his abdomen as he writhed in agony.
Oi, どうしたんだ? 腹でも痛いのか?
He still had his earplugs in, so he had to pretend he didn't hear his captors asking the question. He was about to nod, so he hurriedly had to stop himself.
どったんね?
小僧が腹を押さえてるよ。腹痛かな?
His captors looked down on his suffering form for a bit. One of them proposed a course of action, while another laid his doubts that Toshiki might be faking it.
どったんね? 坊主。腹痛むんかい?
そいつ、耳を塞いでるから聞こえてないぜ。
参ったんな。腹痛に効く薬なんかあらんね。薬局行って買ってくるか。
腹痛って言ったっていろんな薬があるだろう。症状がわからないうちはいい加減な薬は買えないぜ。
That is true.
腹押さえてるし。便秘やん。便秘薬でも買ってくれば収まるやんね。間違って飲んでも死なんしな。
決めつけるなよ。盲腸とかかもしれないだろう。俺のおじさんがさ、昔急になったことあってよ。
Okay, so he's like escalating this to something pretty serious.
あれはかなりビビったぜ。
One of the captors leaned over beside the boy, who was bent over in agony.
かわいそうにな。全身汗だらけじゃないかよ。腹か？痛むのか？おいおい、痛むんならあんまり抑え込んじゃかえって悪いぞ。
Realizing that his captors were concerned about his stomach, he inadvertently let his shirt right up, letting the scar from his surgery come into plain view. His vision was still obscured with packing tape, so he couldn't see the reaction to his scar. But his captors were taken aback, and judging from their momentary silence, he had obtained the reaction he was looking for.
おい、やばいぜ。この手術跡はそんなに昔のものじゃないぜ。
その小僧、熱出てるんかいね。体温計あるん？
あるわけねえよ。でもすごい汗だぜ。おでこは結構熱いと思う。
How do you fake that?
緊張状態が続くとさ、 昔の傷なんかに応えたりするって聞いたことあるぜ。
じゃあどうすんよ。薬じゃ治らんちゅんてんか。
何の手術跡か知らねえけど、とにかくまずいだろ。下手すると命に関わるぜ。
まずいんて。これは本当にまずいんて。
医者に見せた方がいい。このままじゃ突然ぽっくりいっちまう可能性だってあるだろう。
Toshiki Inukai, with those few words, knew that the situation was progressing exactly as he had envisioned it, and snickering to himself on the inside, pressed his act even further. Didn't even need to see to know that his captors were panicked and were running around like chickens with their heads cut off at this troublesome turn of events. Wow, this kid is brave. I'm not gonna lie. That is like really brave to do that.
診療所連れて行くか。
そりゃまずん。先生を連れてくる方がいいね。
入江の先生か？いいのか？大丈夫か？
人質に何かあったらまずんね。しゃあない。緊急事態やん。
Okay. I mean, obviously, name dropping Irie makes it seem like he's quite likely the doctor that is, like, safe, right? And that they might, like, that they have regular contact with and think won't leak this information. One of the captors hurriedly left in the car. Another of the men, completely shaken up at this point, wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. It looked like they were bringing a doctor. As long as the doctor wasn't an accomplice, that doctor was his goal. He was someone he should seek help from. His captors were probably wary of that happening. They would be prepared for it. This would all come down to luck. I think the doctor probably is an accomplice. Some of the sweat emerging from his brow was from that nervousness. At that moment, the packing tape that was covering his eyes and ears was torn off. The burning light that he was seeing for the first time in several days hurt his eyes. After that, the gag that made it hard for him to breathe was also removed.
大丈夫かこそ。今お医者を連れてくるからな。
Honestly, now that he has his senses, right? Now that he can, like, they're letting him see and hear and talk again, I feel like it's going to make it a lot harder to keep up the act.
しばらく我慢してろな。
The doctor was coming. The doctor was coming. Now, how was he going to ask for help? And how was he going to get away from his captors? A plethora of thoughts began swirling through his mind.
分かってると思うが、お医者に余計なことは言うなよ。俺たちも別にお前に乱暴がしたいわけじゃないんだ。そりゃ分かってるよな。
Toshiki Inukai nodded while feigning pain and obedience. His expectations and the enemy's expectations. Whether they doubted he was faking his illness or not, they knew what his goal was and would try to stop it. His stomach contracted from the stress of this gambit, making it seem like his stomach really was starting to hurt. No, it really was. But there was no reason to panic. If he failed with his approach to the doctor, there was nothing to lose. If there was something to lose, it was this method of faking illness to get in touch with the doctor. If he could think of other methods from here on out, it wasn't much. But at the present, this was the easiest and most dramatic way he could think of. The more he thought about it, the more it looked like this was his first and last gambit. Eventually, he heard the sound of a car approaching once again. The sound of the car doors being hurriedly opened and shut. The sounds of several footsteps approaching. A young man in a white medical coat. As he acknowledged the boy, a suspicious look showed itself on his face.
彼は村の子じゃありませんね。
The captors didn't respond. From the looks of it, the young doctor had realized that this was an abnormal situation. One of the captors talked threateningly.
先生には関係のないことです。
For a while, the doctor and the captors silently glared at one another. However, unable to stand the sight of the boy continuing to suffer, the doctor, as the captors had hoped, didn't press any further. What? I hadn't looked at his old art. Yeah, every time I look, I consistently like the console style the most.
その古い手術跡というのが何の手術でしたか？
そりゃわからないです。
本当は診療所に連れ帰るべきなんですがね。
先生、そりゃさすがにちょっと。
I don't know. Maybe I have a little too much doubt when it comes to Irie, but given that they called him Kantaku, I really just can't I can't just dismiss the possibility that he's in on this, but it feels like he's somehow about to clutch up a bit. The doctor said he wanted to bring the boy back to the clinic, but the captors simply silently shook their heads at the notion. It was a fleeting hope, but it was only natural that the captors would refuse. At that moment, his eyes met with the doctor's. Seeing that the boy's painful state was abnormal, the doctor suspected it was a serious illness.
大丈夫ですか？私は医者です。この手術跡はいつ頃のものですか？
去年の冬に事故で。
事故？そうですか。参ったな。
He couldn't let the doctor figure out that he was faking it here. He had to somehow figure out some way to keep this going and tell the doctor that he was being confined and needed help.
患部を少し触りますよ。痛むところがあったら。
Seeing that it was extremely painful, the doctor crossed his arms and began to ponder. He had to somehow get himself to a hospital. To Toshiki Inukai, faking this illness was the performance of a lifetime. This kid is brave as hell, I'm not gonna lie. Dude. Oh my goodness, shut up, phone.
皆さんもご苦労さんなことです。
I don't know. We're gonna see if this gambit accomplishes something relevant, but the fact that he's even attempting this, I'm like, it's bold, right? It's really bold, especially when he knows that they're not gonna hurt him, right? They've explicitly said as much, right, and have made no indication that that's going to change, really, right? And it's I feel like a lot of people would view that as if I just keep on waiting, it'll be fine. It'll be fine eventually, right? And this kid's they probably won't hurt me, but I still gotta bust out of here, right? And he's making a serious attempt at it, you know? It's just that's crazy.
お暑いでしょうが、せいぜい頑張ってくださいよ。不法投棄のダンプが現れたらすぐにご連絡ください。急行いたしますのでね。
ご協力感謝しますよ、大石さん。どうぞ。
The gap wide enough for a single car was opened up in the barricade. Oishi, showing his gratitude, or perhaps a threatening attitude, with a short beep on the horn, rolled the car forward through the checkpoint. This time, my appearance was the very embodiment of the word suspicious. A baseball cap, mask, and sunglasses. On top of that, even though it was sweltering, I was wearing a hoodie. Any respectable police officer would be loath to not stop me for questioning. I'd meant to be overcautious, knowing full well that my face was known. But it might have already been too late for that to have any use. Using that as an excuse, I doffed the unbearably hot hoodie and windbreaker, ripped off the mask and hat, and threw them in the seat behind me.
ありゃ、いいんですか？
こんな小細工したところでどうせ割れているでしょうから。
そりゃまあそうでしょうな。
Oishi, probably thinking that my unexpected behavior was funny, continued to laugh. The beautiful and pristine scenery of Hinamizawa spread out before me. The village itself would have been quite beautiful if it weren't for the complicated circumstances surrounding it at the moment. I would absolutely love to take Yuki here for a drive one day. Come to think of it, I didn't get a chance to call her last night. I played around with the idea in my head. But in reality, this village wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, it's, kind of the opposite of that. I'd heard everything at the prefectural headquarters. At the heart of this village, the intelligence network that the three families wielded was, due to blood ties and regional relationships, unbelievably well organized. Their net spread not just around Hinamizawa itself, but encapsulated the entirety of the city of Shishibone as well. When I first heard that, somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I didn't take it completely seriously. How could a local organization out in the boonies have something so grandiose? I couldn't deny that somewhere in the back of my mind I had ridiculed the thought. But not only were they really threatening the minister, but they had demonstrated they had a complete grasp on our movements, which were supposed to be top secret. They were almost like the secret police that controlled a small Eastern European country, like in some spy novel. God, I wonder who they're talking about there. The villagers here wouldn't bat an eye at getting their hands dirty if it meant fighting the dam project. You are correct. They would not bat an eye at that. I also heard something like that at the prefectural headquarters. Now that you mention it, when I first arrived here, Oishi also said that this place was a war zone, didn't he? The residents of this village were at the same time freedom fighters, although by definition they were no different than guerrillas or a militia. They weren't protected by the Geneva Convention, but they also didn't have to adhere to those rules either. This place was more of a quagmire than any legitimate battlefield. A secret war was unfolding. Yeah, sounds about right. I could drive along because Oishi was with me. But if I was to leave this car for even something as trivial as looking for a vending machine, there was a chance I wouldn't return. Even though a single shot hadn't been fired, this was a battlefield. No, the reason why bullets weren't flying was simply because it was hard for a civilian to obtain a gun in Japan. So they were probably just equipped with weapons other than guns that were easier to obtain. That was why Oishi was wearing that stab-proof vest, wasn't it?
赤坂さん、緊張してます。
The fact that I was apprehensive was, of course, picked up on by Oishi. If he already figured it out, there was no point in trying to deny or hide it.
もちろんです。敵の本拠地にたった2人で乗り込んでいるんですよ。この人数では万一の時が不安です。
万一の時？な大丈夫ですよ。
この村の人間すべてが全員が口裏を合わせれば、この村で白昼堂々殺人が起こっても証拠一つ残らない。
He's got a good grasp on the village, I'll give him that.
そういうところだと聞いていますよ。
This is what the ironclad rule of not barging into a Yakuza office alone was about. If there wasn't a neutral party involved, that area wasn't bound by the laws of common sense. If something happened, you wouldn't be able to prove it, and there wasn't anybody who would take your side. It was pretty much the definition of poking the bear.
ひなみ沢地区へ向かうと同僚に言い残してますしね。万一の時は無線機もありますし、赤坂さんが怖がってるほどね。そう簡単には完全犯罪はできませんよ。まあ、もちろん油断をしないに越したことはありませんがね。
I don't know, in Hinamizawa it feels pretty close to that likely, I'm not gonna lie.
赤坂さん、緊張しすぎですよ。
I feel like he's really not. I feel like he's reasonably worked up about this.
前にご一緒してた時の方がリラックスしてらしたじゃないですか。な
Laughing it off, Oishi thumped his chest and grinned, as if to say I could depend on him.
まあ、本当の本当にヤバくなったら桜の大門にはこいつがありますからね。
Oishi made a motion by sticking out his index finger. It was undoubtedly the image of a gun, that boy said.
役に立ちますか？
撃った後の後始末云々が怖くなければ、実に心強いですよ。
An officer's gun was only for show. If you really wanted to fire it, there were quite a number of stipulations, and you had to be prepared for the long probationary period afterwards. That definitely wasn't worth it. So even if an officer did unholster his gun, there wasn't one who actually wanted to pull the trigger.
赤坂さんは持ってるんですか？これ。
まあ、一応。
撃ったことは？
ありますよ。訓練で。
そりゃそうでしょうな。
But he's never shot it in like an actual fight.
なら大石さんにはあるんですか？
Oishi probably has a few bodies, I'm not gonna lie.
私ですか？ね。まさか。あるわけないじゃないですか。
What was this? I thought he was laughing at me because he had experience. The two of us laughed together.
銃口を向けたこともありませんがね。銃口を向けられたことなら何度かありますよ。銃口を覗かされるだけで寿命が3年は縮むな。
Dude, I bet. I desperately hope I never end up in that situation. Even if he had never fired a gun before, you couldn't even begin to compare the amount of experience Oishi had over me. At a time like this, I can only marvel again at how reliable Oishi seemed. The fact that they keep hammering home...
そういえば、日の高いうちにこっちには来たくなかったな。
The fact that they keep hammering home how reliable he is makes me think he's... I feel like he might be reliable in the moment, but I still just... I can't help but feel like they're gonna pull like a he's a mole card, or he's involved, you know?
でも、シャドウはここを抜ける以外にないし、赤坂さん、念のため、もう一回マスクで顔を隠してください。
どうしたんです？
冷房がうるさいから聞こえないかな？切りますよ。窓を開けてみてください。
When I opened the window, a blast of hot air blew inside, and then I could hear angry yelling coming from far away. At that moment, the forest gave way on either side of us, and our view expanded suddenly. That makes sense. And there could be seen the Hinamizawa Dam construction grounds, the very front line for Hinamizawa Village. The crackling blare of someone's voice sounded over an enormous loudspeaker. The roar of angry voices continued to rumble. The incredible volume had become a veritable sound cannon, spewing out its ammunition. The prefabricated site office was surrounded by 2 sets of high fences laced with barbed wire. Dang. This place sounds like it's a lot more secure than the Onikafuchi Guardians headquarters. Lined up in front of those fences were riot police in their vehicles, and surrounding it all were the villagers. They howled out their protests against the dam as a single entity.
今日は少ないですね。ついてます。
少ないんですか？
ええ、多い時だと道路までいっぱいになりますよ。うちうち車も通れません。
At first, due to their overwhelming intensity, it looked to me like there was more people than there actually was. But upon close, oh my goodness. At first, due to their overwhelming intensity, it looked to me like there was more people than there actually was. But upon closer inspection, there were at most 50 to 70 of them. But the 6 or 7 propaganda trucks lined up that looked like they belonged to a band of thugs were a strange enough sight. The villagers were also wearing helmets and bandanas, as well as covering their faces with masks, adding to the oddity of it all. The propaganda trucks, after braying their chorus, had their volumes turned up even higher and began to flood the area with sutras. To say that the noise was downright violent wouldn't be an understatement. From this distance it was still this loud. The glass in the office was probably rattling from the noise.
あれをガンガンやられるとたまんないんですよね。昨日の連中、全員耳栓してて、それでも耳がおかしくなるそうです。
Goodness.
気の毒な話です。
That's insane. Even with earplugs?
騒音規制でなんとかできないんですか？
うちの県には騒音規制に関する規定ね。
Tough.
ないんですよ。
That's unfortunate.
それにほら、お経でしょ。宗教活動規制できないし、連中も頭いいんです。
They always find a way. Is what I think Oishi said. Actually, no matter how tightly the window was shut, the booming sound of the sutras still filled the car. I couldn't even hear what Oishi, who was sitting right next to me, was saying. As the car approached the line of propaganda trucks, the blare became difficult to bear. It wasn't enough to just plug my ears with my fingers, I had to hold my head to keep my skull from splitting apart. If I'd seen this terrifying energy sooner, I would have probably understood what Hinamizawa village was much quicker. Now I knew. They wouldn't blink an eye at sacrificing themselves in order to protect their hometown. Ah, so goddamn noisy. Shut up, shut up, shut up! My head throbbed and felt like it was going to split apart. My eardrums crackled, and on top of it all, I felt like I was going to throw up. With the road crowded with the throng of squatters, the propaganda trucks, and the riot police's vehicles, it was in no way easy to get by. Even if you tried to shoo the squatters with the car horn, they were also wearing earplugs, oblivious to noises from the outside world, and wouldn't easily move. The car could only inch forward at a snail's pace. Even then, the car eventually got through, starting to leave the tumultuous noise behind.
ほら、昨日一緒に麻雀やったメンツにお年寄りさんいたでしょ。覚えてます？
Yeah. I remember that there was an older person who didn't exactly mince words. The guy that Oishi called old man. You know, definitely the foreman here.
いらっしゃいましたね。
彼ね、第一航空の現場監督さんなんですよ。あそこのプレハブの中でイライラしながら仕事をなさってるんでしょうね。お気の毒なことです。
I was gonna say, poor guy.
あれが毎日ではたまったものではないでしょう。
Might have been a small mercy that they killed and dismembered that man.
耐えかねて辞めちゃう人が後を絶ちません。まあ、その度にお給金がアップしてるんで、なんとも言えませんが。
Even having to deal with all that noise and hostility, they still made a wage that Oishi found enviable. Yeah. I mean, based on what it sounds like they're going through, like, even with earplugs, the noise is so ridiculous that it's damaging their hearing. Like, you would have to pay me a lot of money to consider setting foot in that site. A group of squatters were in the way of the car. Oishi, sufficiently annoyed, laid into the horn, but there was no indication that they were moving anytime soon. In this din, could they not even hear a car horn? Or did they hear it and were being malicious? If there were any riot police nearby, they would have made people move, but it just so happened there weren't any around here. Oishi opened up the door. The hot air and even more heated roar of the crowd spilled into the car. Oishi said something as he grinned widely, but I couldn't hear what it was. He was getting them to move. Something like that? Oishi stepped out of the car and closed the door. The din faded slightly. I stared blankly as Oishi headed towards the group and started some sort of conversation. Maybe we'd find the minister's grandson at Takatsudo. At the very least, I wanted to find him there. Find him and slip the cursed bonds of this incomprehensible village. I could only pray. At that moment, a shadow was suddenly cast over me. Somebody was standing right outside the passenger side window, blocking the sunlight. I spun around, looked up, and realized who the backlit figure was. Oh. What's up? Ain't that funny? What's up? How you doing, Rika? It was a girl. It was Rika Furude. The girl stared down at me with a bored look in her eyes. I didn't have any justification for it, but I felt like I had been found by somebody I shouldn't be found by, as she warned you to go home. To fill the silence, I raised my hand as I mouthed the meek greeting. Of course, there was no way she heard my small voice in this clamor. But even then, she could have seen me wave my hand in greeting. In spite of that, she simply stared down at me with a cold look on her face. At that moment, the noise and heat spread throughout the car once again. Oishi had returned to the driver's seat. Taking a look, the group that were blocking the road had started to move aside while glaring our way.
Omatase-shimashita.
I don't even want to know what he did to get them to move.
Ikimashou ka.
Oishi registered the figure of the girl behind me. One of the villagers came over and picked her up. In a manner of, it's dangerous, so get away. It was then that she whispered one or two words. However, I couldn't hear any of it.
Sate, ikimashou ka ne. Tobashimasu yo. Mochiron, houtei sokudo junshu de.
Yeah, bro wants to get out of here. As if to shake off the still audible angry voices, Oishi floored the gas. Along with the roar and the din and the shouting, the villagers and the girl quickly disappeared behind us.
この先を抜けると高津戸地区です。銃撃戦の覚悟は大丈夫ですか？安全装置外すの土壇場でとちらないでくださいよ。
Oishi laughed mockingly again. I was more concerned with what the girl had said, however, I was vaguely bothered by it. What was she trying to say with that apathetic and candid expression? Probably like, too late, or you're dead.
今から緊張したって仕方ないですよ。むしろ収穫がなくて勇み足って可能性だって十分にあるんですから。
But there was no longer a way to confirm what the girl had tried to tell me. It might have been that the girl who warned me to go back to Tokyo again, or else, was saying to me who was here now, ignoring that warning.
警告したのに、バカなやつ。
I had the feeling she said something like that. Probably. If I had to guess, I would say, yeah, that's probably exactly what was said. Alright, is this a transition, or are we at chapter end? Okay, I was gonna say, there's no way it's over already. If you were to call Hinamizawa a rather lonely village, then Takatsudo was outright desolate. For your everyday city boy like me, I just couldn't understand why anybody would force themselves to live here. There were signs that people had, but they were all covered in dust or enveloped in ivy, indicating that it was all abandoned.
こんなところにも人は住んでいたんですね。
まあ、昔の話でしょうな。こんな偏僻なとこじゃ年寄りには辛いですし。
Man, Rika seeing us there is obviously really concerning. I feel like that was basically worst case scenario. Should have covered his face. And it would have been pretty obvious it was him still, but would have had at least some plausible deniability.
若者だってもう少しまともな土地に住みたいでしょうしね。後を継ぐ者がいなきゃ最後にはこうなるってことでしょうな。
Even if I had no personal attachment to this village, seeing the disused buildings made me feel a little sentimental. It seemed that Oishi also felt the same way.
こんなところで財布が発見されたんですか？財布の取得者もよくこんなに偏僻なところに通りかかったものですね。
ああ、村人には山の中に畑を持ってる連中がいましてね。そういう連中は朝晩ここを通りますから。
畑仕事の村人たちは早朝や夕方に ここを徒歩で通ると？
まさか行けるところまでは車で行くでしょうな。
早朝や夕方にこんなところを走行して落ちているたった一つの財布を発見できます？
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it is a little suspicious.
できたんでしょうな。
取得者はどこで取得したと言っていますか？
もう少し先を行ったところにある茂みです。取得者はたまたまお腹が痛くなってちょいと茂みで用を足そうと思ったらしい。
I'm not sure that I buy this. I feel like this is a setup.
それで偶然見つけたらしいんですよ。中にちり紙でも入ってるのを期待したんですかね。
話ができすぎているように感じます。財布発見の当初からそういう違和感が拭えません。
I expressed the feeling that I had from the start of the day quite frankly. It seemed too good to be true, but it was unwavering proof. But it was too perfect, sickeningly so. That was my feeling.
できすぎってな、案外当たってるかもしれませんよ。
というと？
実は四課のお友達からちょいと聞いたんですがね、園崎お涼が大臣の孫の誘拐事件について言及したって話なんです。
言及した？
大臣の孫ももう誘拐されてから何日にもなってかわいそうだ。そろそろ解放されるといいなぁと。そう、お涼のばあさんが縁側でぼそりとつぶやいたってな話らしいんです。で、そのぼそりが園崎家の裏の裏のあちこちに伝えられてるようです。
Right. Right. I had heard something earlier from Sato-san, the informant, that when the leader Oryu had a concern, somebody in the family would be considerate.
つまり、それは実質上の人質解放命令ですか？
私はそう見てます。この出来すぎの財布発見は孫を警察に引き渡すためのイベントじゃないかと。
He might have actually made this more difficult by, the kid might have made it more difficult by, with his little gambit. If they bring him to the hospital and they, like, narrowly miss each other.
どうして人質の解放を？
Because Oryu said so.
そりゃ人質を解放するなんて理由は一つしかないじゃないですか。
And their demands have been met.
なんです？
取引の成立ですよ。ひなみ沢ダム計画の中止を大臣が約束ってことですかね。
ダム計画なんて必ずなくなっちゃいますのです。
At that moment, those words that the girl had said resurfaced in the back of my mind. In the end, it was turning out exactly as she had proclaimed. The young girl knew the circumstances. She knew everything about this kidnapping incident, from the beginning to the end.
赤坂？
The girl unexpectedly called my name.
なんだい？
東京へ帰れ。
Huh?
あなたはもう幾ばくもしないうちに。それがあまりにもみすぼらしくて気の毒な姿だから、今のうちから警告してあげているのです。
どうして私が後悔することになる？
Quick little flashback.
いちいちうるさいな。あなたの親はあなたが赤信号の横断歩道の真ん中にいるとき、どうして危ないのかを全部説明し終えるまで引っ張るでしょ。まず歩道まで連れ戻してから、なぜ危険なのかを解くでしょう。つまりはそういうこと。
The girl, who knew everything from start to finish, had warned me in the beginning. Go back to Tokyo.
赤坂の怖がり。
孫は無事見つかるでしょうが、その後はいろいろと厄介な問題になるでしょうな。どう厄介になるかは一警察官の私には想像もつきませんがね。
フルでリカって少女、ご存知ですか？
What I had said was such a non sequitur that Oishi sat in stunned silence for a while.
もちろん知ってますよ。御三家の一つ、古出家の一人娘ですね。
どういう少女なんです？
おやおや、これは意外な人物名にちょっと驚きです。公安では古出家が臭いと睨んでおられるわけで。
No, it's just Akasaka.
私にも情報を分けてくださいよ。
いや、そういうのじゃないんです。ちょっと 気になったもので。
まあいいや。
I feel like he's gonna spill the beans and then, she's gonna hear about all this.
同じ卓を囲んだ友人の質問なら答えないわけにはいきませんからね。
And then we're gonna be like, wow, how did Rika know all this? You know? Oh, I'm really, really suspicious of Oishi at this point. I'm not gonna lie. Like, really suspicious.
友人と呼んでいただけて光栄です。
で、あのお嬢ちゃんはね、まあ、村のマスコットみたいなもんです。村中の誰からも愛されてます。中でも、年寄り連中には特に崇められてましてね。
崇められる？
よくは知らないんですがね、古出家に生まれた女の子ってのには、多少神聖な意味合いがあるらしいんですよ。ひなみ沢の土着信仰ですがね、お社様の生まれ変わりだとかなんとか、そんな話があるらしいですよ。
お社様。そういえば、同盟の登り旗の中に、お社様と書かれたものがあったような気がします。何ですか？お社様って。
ああ、ひなみ沢の守り神様の名前です。村にあだなす者に罰を当てるって信じられてましてね。
I was trying to think about, like, Rika, like, I don't know, that connection with Oyashiro-sama and her, right? Could it be some method of explanation for why she acted so weird earlier in the chapter, for example? Right? Like, it has something to do with that. I don't know. I'm not going to harp on it too much right now, but that's another one of those things I really got to keep in mind. Right, I really need to look for anything related to Rika, and things like Rika and Oishi feel like the key characters in this chapter that I need to try to understand further.
まあ、そんな便利な神様がいたら、ダムの連中はとっくに神罰にやられているんでしょうが。
Yeah, that's true.
幸い、今日までその罰ってやつは一つも起こってませんがね。
Yeah, yet.
村にあだなす大臣の孫が、お社様の怒りに触れ、なんて言いましたっけ？
鬼隠し。
そう。鬼隠し。大臣の孫を鬼隠しにしたと、そういう筋書きになるわけでしょうか。
なるほどな。そういうことになるんでしょうな。
お社様が下した神罰。なら、犯人はお社様の生まれ変わりである、あの少女。
I don't know. That could be kind of a leap in logic. I don't think it's necessarily unlikely that Rika is responsible for a lot of these things. But I think assuming that them spinning it as the divine punishment brought by Oyashiro-sama, right? They can spin it like that without it actually being the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, even if you believe she is the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. Even I didn't know exactly what I was saying. The fact that Oishi laughed it off was a bit of a relief. Oishi's joyous laughter was so infectious that I began to laugh like an idiot as well.
ありゃ、こりゃ珍しい。
Oishi, after laying into the horn several times, rolled the window down and leaned out, waving his arms in an exaggerated manner. It was a car headed the opposite way. Until now, we hadn't run into any other cars except our own, and of all places, it was at this desolate location. It seemed that Oishi knew the owner of that car. Is it going to be Irie? The other car also chirped its horn and came to a stop.
Irie-no-sensei!
Oh yeah, I mean, it's that white sedan, so saw that one coming.
Konnichiwa.
The other car's window rolled down slowly, revealing a young man in a white overcoat. He was about my age, or perhaps a bit older. But you really can't judge somebody by their appearance.
大石さんじゃありませんか。こんにちは。珍しいところでお会いしますね。
そりゃこっちのセリフですよ、先生。まさかこんなところで会うとはね。どうしたんです？
いえね、ちょっとした往診です。
ありゃ、そうですか。休館とかでしたか？
いえ、そんなに大したことではありませんでした。よかったですよ。
お医者の世話にならずに済むならそれに越したことはないです。
ではこれで。
Oh, we're just gonna let them right past.
急いで戻らないとスタッフに怒られますんで。
Well, I guess might not have the kid with him. But...
診療所長さんも大変です。ではではお気をつけて。
The young doctor named Irie, after gesturing his farewell, drove forwards and soon disappeared around a corner. Oishi also drove forwards, but soon came to a stop again. He pulled out a worn map book from the dash. His expression didn't have an ounce of irreverence. He was perfectly serious.
どうしたんです？
今日は診療所は往診の日じゃないはずです。
Yeah, this was like...
よっぽどの急患か、特殊な事情のある患者ということになりますね。
Oh yeah, he knows what's up. That's good. Oishi flipped through the pages, opening up to the map of Taketsudo. After that, he took a look around and started to figure out what our current location was.
その急患が怪しいということですか？
Yes.
言ったでしょう、高津戸地区にね、住んでる人なんてほとんどいないんですよ。今私たちがいる道はここ。入江先生はこの道に対して。
Trying to deduce where, I think he knows, like, he has a good indication that, he was probably, there for the, for, Toshiki Inukai, and is trying to deduce exactly where his hiding spot is. Having no sense of our surroundings, I couldn't digest anything about the place he was indicating on the map.
私たちは財布の取得場所を目指しています。ちなみに取得場所はここ。でもね、高津戸地区にわずかにある民家に向かうには、そもそも道が違うんです。
つまり、入江医師は民家のない方角から来たと。
And why would he be doing that?
山間の段々畑で農作業中に誰かが倒れたってのでない限りね、人が倒れて医者が呼ばれたら、普通は連れ帰って詳しく調べるもんです。でもさっき入江医師は、大したことはなかったと言いましたね。
Kind of feels like Irie learned what's up and just left.
車には他には誰も乗っていなかったようですし。
Unless they were in the trunk, I guess. Oishi didn't say any more than that. I also said nothing more. That doctor just now examined a patient close by. Only that. The noisy radio had suddenly gone quiet. The sky had just as suddenly turned an oppressive color. As Oishi mused that it might start to rain, a torrential downpour started, as though trying to not disappoint him. Interesting. Why does this happen so often in the dramatic moments in Higurashi? You come to a point where you feel like it's not a coincidence, right? The fact that this so regularly happens during the craziest moments, right? Eventually, Oishi stopped the car. The only sounds to break the silence were the percussion of the rain on the roof and the soft squeak of the windshield wipers.
ちょいと静かで行きましょうかね。
Saying that in a quiet voice, he exited the car without an umbrella, careful not to make any noise. Oishi leaned over, indicating the other side of the thicket. He was pointing to a prefabricated shed and a car that was parked beside it. The car looked obviously well cared for. It wasn't a vehicle that had been left there for several years.
あの小屋は
営林署の機材小屋です。夏場以外は利用されてないと聞きました。
あの車は営林署の職員の？
No way.
さあね、公用車には見えないですね。
Oishi was playing it cool, but my nervousness was gradually increasing.
一応は念のため。
Saying that, Oishi returned to the car. I thought he was going to get an umbrella, but he had grabbed the onboard radio instead.
もしもし、大石です。聞こえてるかな？こんにちは、こんにちは。
はい、沖宮 PS。大石さん、感度良好です。どうぞ。
今、高津戸地区の営林署機材小屋前です。矢後地に向かう方じゃないよ。南沢から高津戸に入る方の。
はい、確認しました。
小屋に不審者。これより職質します。5分で連絡なかったら駐在所に連絡と大至急応援パトを送ってください。よろしくお願いします。
了解しました。
For as much as I want to doubt Oishi, in these moments he is just so reliable. Like, I cannot deny it, right? God. I legitimately don't know. We're gonna let, like, before I make a deduction on Oishi, we're gonna let this chapter play out as a whole. And I mean, like, all of chapter 4, not just this, like, episode, right? Because, right at the beginning, it shows that Akasaka is going to meet Oishi again, right? And, I mean, I think if Oishi's a mole, we're going to learn right there, right? Like, I don't know that they would, like, not reveal that info, if that makes sense. Alright, so let's just keep moving for now. See what's gonna happen. See if they're gonna rescue, the kid.
じゃあ行ってみましょうかね。
Since he was first confined here, he had heard the sound of a car multiple times, so he just thought the far-off sound was more of the same. However, the reaction from his captors was, until now, something he hadn't seen before. They jumped, reacting as if shocked by a jolt of electricity, and pressed against the window, cautiously peering outside.
止まったな。
営林署の人間、まずいぜ。
いや、警察やんな。
One of the captors lifted the boy by his collar and pressed a blade against his cheek.
お兄ちゃん、ちょい静かにしててな。分かってると思うけど、大声出したりすると大変なことになるからな。
Toshiki Inukai was sure that the doctor had reported things to the police. He had felt relief when he thought that he was saved, but not imagining that his captors would resort to violence when they were cornered, his anxiety remained unabated.
どうする?
No, Irie did not tell them anything.
時間稼いでる。小僧連れて、ちょい裏から抜けな。
Surely they see this coming, right?
ほとぼり冷めたら落ち合おう。
One of the perpetrators grabbed the boy by the collar and forced him to stand. Of course, Toshiki Inukai tried to resist by feigning that his illness had been aggravated by this rough treatment, but his captors paid no heed. Bang, bang, bang. The door was violently banged upon.
ごめんください。こんにちは。
Bang, 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 bang. The door was banged on again. Toshiki Inukai hesitated for a moment to respond to that voice by yelling. However, while he was being indecisive, his mouth was covered, taking that option away from him. The leader of the captors waved at the other to go. The younger perpetrator nodded in response, and while keeping the boy's mouth covered, started heading towards the back door.
はいはい。何かご用かいね。
どうも。警察ですがね。ここ。急な雨で困っちゃいましてね。
ええ、今開けますん。
The moment the lock was undone, Oishi forced the door open. And with a gleam of menace in his eyes, he pushed the man aside as he stepped into the room. Then, in the small and empty room, he was able to quickly discern that the boy he was looking for was nowhere to be seen.
あれ？私はここは営林署の機材倉庫だって聞いてたんですけどね。何にもありませんね。
There was nothing inside the room that would indicate that this was an equipment shed. There was only a mountain of blankets, indicating that somebody was sleeping here, alongside empty food packets strewn about.
ああ、ここはずいぶん前から空っぽさね。
Surely Akasaka was guarding, like, the other side, right?
機材がしまってあるところなんて。
でも営林署の建物でしょ。あんた営林署の人。
あんたこそ誰よ。警察？
The two of them glared at each other suspiciously. Both Oishi and the man steadfastly refused to reveal their identity before the other did. That man, judging from the sharp look in Oishi's eyes, realizes that it would be hard to talk his way out of this one. No matter what he said, the most time he could buy would probably be only a few dozen seconds. Only the sound of rain filled this tense moment. Just then, they heard the sound of a struggle from far off. Oishi had a hunch. There was no doubt that Akasaka, who was circling around back, had run into the perpetrators who were trying to slip away. As Oishi thought that, the man in front of him reacted a moment faster. Oh, he got beat to the draw. The man swung with an attack that was more intended to obscure Oishi's vision rather than actually hit him in the face. Seizing his opportunity, the man aimed a kick at Oishi's groin without any hesitation. But he missed his mark and was unable to land that critical blow. About to get gadded down. The man, trying to pin Oishi, grabbed him by the base of his neck with both hands and fiercely tried to push him down. But as Oishi fell backwards, as if kicking the man upward, he dug his foot into the man's midsection. With that leg acting as a fulcrum, the man was flowing by the falling Oishi as if by a circle throw. The two of them squared off in the pouring rain.
面白いじゃないの。俺とやろうってか。
I can't deny, no matter what Oishi is, rat, not a rat, he kind of goes hard sometimes. Bro, like, this man, he's a old vet. He got a little bit of chub to him. He's like, oh, you want to go? Like, we can scrap if you want. Oishi, as if trying to cheer himself on, grinned smugly. He then stood up while brushing the mud off himself. Even though he countered the assault, Oishi was getting up rather awkwardly compared to the man whom he threw, who swiftly sprang to his feet. Oh, yikes, he might be hurt.
Oi-sa! Hayaku!
Akasaka's voice rang out from the distance. Judging from the distress in his voice, he was already engaged in a fight and wanted Oishi to reconvene with him. But Oishi's hands were full as well.
Akasaka-san! Moshiwakenai! Chotto mattete kudasai yo!
The man raised both fists into a stance that hinted at him being acquainted with karate or some other form of martial art. Of course, Oishi, as an officer of the law, was decently versed in judo. He also had the moxie to have been through his fair share of fights before, because of that. He could tell that the man in front of him was quite a bit better at fighting than he was. Ah, damn it! Thinking that this was going to be easy just because the order came from the Sonozaki family to release the hostage had been a big mistake.
なかなか上等じゃないのよ。久々に胃液がこみ上げてくる感じがしますよ。
Oishi played off the situation like it was no sweat. His opponent, seeing his attitude, took that to mean that Oishi wasn't going to go down easily. The man wildly charged forward, attempting to grab Oishi. If the man managed a successful clinch from his low stance, Oishi would be tackled to the ground and end up being mounted. It was something you often saw when children fought, but it really was a bad position, since you couldn't do much once you were in it. Oishi responded to that move, also lowered his stance to collide with the man head-on. Oh man, they're playing American football real quick. The lower man wins. The moment they clashed, Oishi grabbed the man's lapel? What is that? As he yanked the lapel upwards, he smashed into the man's solar plexus with the elbow of the same arm. It was a move from Oishi's own personal brand of brawling judo. He then grabbed on with his free hand and attempted to throw his opponent with both hands, but the man lowered his center of gravity and swung his arms in a large arc, entwining them with Oishi's. Getting like a proper fight scene in Higurashi is not something I expected from this episode. Not only that, but he had forced both of Oishi's elbows to the outside, and Oishi, now in an awkward position, was in danger of exposing his back with his hand still clutching the man's chest. This guy practiced Aikido or grappling, didn't he? Oishi, cursing the fact that his fingers were twisted into the man's shirt and couldn't get away, released his grip. But he was still in the awkward position of being bent over. And to top it off, at zero range, the man was able to read Oishi's movements completely as he tried to squirm his way into a better position. Why do I really feel like Oishi's going to shoot this man? And then took the palms of his hands and swiftly clapped them over both of Oishi's ears. Oh, that's like a cartoon move.
That's...
Clapping the ears in any other martial art except for self-defense was basically forbidden. Karate and judo didn't recognize it as a legal technique. It was that much of a simple and dangerous attack. Oishi raised both his hands as he tried to reflexively clutch at his own ears. But before that could happen, the man wrapped his arm around Oishi's neck. Uh-oh. His thick biceps clenched firmly around the base of Oishi's neck like a vice. Oishi instinctively thought he was going to be killed. After all, it wasn't hard to believe that a man like this, who was accustomed to fighting, could crush his opponent's neck from this position. But his opponent didn't do that. He had chosen to keep his hold and force Oishi to lose consciousness. That's why Oishi, at that moment, even though his face was twitching, was grinning widely. Even though his opponent had a chance to kill him, he didn't choose to. He was thinking, this guy has no intention of killing me. Is this where he's like, wrong? However, even though that might be the case, the man's hold on his neck was by no means gentle. In no time at all, Oishi's consciousness began to fade. Having the experience of being taken down countless times in judo during his student days, Oishi was utterly resigned to the fact that it was over. Either Akasaka's gonna clutch or he's gonna resort to the gun. Or, I don't know, maybe he just gets knocked out. Oh man, he might have just lost. He might just be unconscious. Akasaka was finally recovering from the intense pain of being kicked in a rather sensitive area. He'd bumped into the captor carrying the boy by the back entrance. He had seen Toshiki Inukai's picture plenty of times, but wasn't able to immediately ascertain if the boy in front of him was the real deal, with his mouth covered in packing tape. Also, with his limited experience, it wasn't hard for him to panic over how to deal with the situation. Of course, the perpetrator didn't overlook this momentary lapse. His kick landed squarely in a critical spot, with Akasaka not even having time to call for help. Yeah, he definitely just got hit by a groin shot, bro. That's tough. As the man flung the boy over his shoulder, he headed towards the front of the shed, but upon hearing Oishi's bellowing voice, he gave up on going that direction. He then dashed off towards the forest, as if the weight of the boy slung over his shoulder wasn't even there. Akasaka was lost for a moment. Meeting up with Oishi, who was fighting with the enemy, was by far the safer option, but he couldn't just lose sight of the fleeing man. Akasaka stood up and chased after the captor's back. He ran through a short thicket, branches and fallen leaves crunching underfoot. The tips of branches raked and clawed at him, small scratches inscribing themselves on his body one after another. Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's not rescuing Oishi, so Oishi either loses the fight or he's going to just straight up kill that man. I feel like those are the two possibilities here. It doesn't seem like Akasaka's going to double back and save him. He kept on stepping into puddles and mud, and his shoes were soon filled with murky water. For Akasaka, traveling through this unexplored forest was, even though this was an emergency situation, extremely unpleasant. As he said that, he regretted immediately, as it was but a waste of breath. There wasn't a thief in the world that would politely stop when told to by the police, let alone a kidnapper. To a city boy like Akasaka, running through this forest was an arduous task. However, it must have been no easy task either for the man carrying the minister's grandson. He had neither gained nor lost ground in his pursuit. Akasaka, upon realizing that, gained back a bit of composure. Just keep on chasing him. We are running in the same conditions. In fact, the man running with an awkward stride was at far more of a disadvantage. They couldn't run forever. Eventually, he'd definitely trip and fall. As long as he was being hounded, he would definitely stumble. And soon, his wish was fulfilled. The man who had stepped in something and lost his balance was no longer able to bear the weight of the boy, dropping him. Akasaka, in all honesty, didn't care about the perpetrator at all, just as long as he could ensure the safety of Toshiki Inukai. So if the perpetrator ran off by himself, it was perfectly acceptable. But it seemed that Toshiki Inukai was important to the man as well, and didn't choose to just run away empty-handed. Akasaka didn't know what to do in this kind of situation. His first priority should probably be to ensure the safety of the boy, subduing his captor being less important. Grappling with the perpetrator wasn't something he planned on. I don't know that you have another choice, though. Yeah, exactly, but most likely it was either do or die. Yeah, possibly quite literally. Akasaka's moment of indecision proved to be fatal. The man, aiming right between, or rather for both of Akasaka's eyes, struck out with a jab. Not wanting that, Akasaka raised both of his hands to shield his face. At that moment, the man kicked at his unguarded midsection. The pain almost felt like his vital organs were being squeezed out of his body, but he latched onto his opponent's leg. But his opponent didn't hesitate one bit. Leading with his seized foot, the man jumped at Akasaka, applying pressure and pushing him down. Akasaka was unable to withstand that and fell, but under no circumstances was he letting that leg go. They're both kind of getting whooped, bro. The two men fell together in a tangled heap. The man was desperate to pull his leg free from Akasaka, but having fallen in an awkward position, was unable to. Well, that might help at least. The two of them rolled on the ground, floundering about trying to gain an advantage. But Akasaka, who was holding onto his opponent's knee with both hands, and that opponent, who had complete freedom to move his upper body, were in two completely different situations. The man gained a positional advantage on Akasaka, who was still latched onto his legs and couldn't move away, and pounded full force on his head with both his fists. Not only that, he found a rock nearby and beat it against Akasaka's skull. Yeah, he's trying to kill you, bro. Please, look. I would not encourage cops to let loose on a firearm. But, this man's actually trying to bash your skull in, bro. Really, I don't know. You either gotta really be confident in your fighting prowess to get out of this extremely disadvantaged process, or you gotta remember that no amount of fighting technique and no amount of brawn will stop a bullet. You know? Thwack, thwack, thwack. The difference between being hit with a fist and being hit with a rock was vast. Akasaka quickly thought of letting go of the man's leg to free his hands to protect his head, but if he let go here, the man would get away. If he didn't dig in here, everything would be for naught. Bro, you're just gonna die if you don't let go. I mean, we know he won't, but the boy he was trying to save was right there. He was going to save him and go back to Tokyo. If he could do that, then it was goodbye to this freakish village. Bam! Crack! Thud! Without looking, I could tell my forehead had split open and was gushing blood. But I didn't let go of the man's leg. How could I? I won't let go. When the man realized that no matter how much he beat my head, he wasn't getting away, he used both his arms to grab my throat as if to crush my windpipe. Dang, are they about to both get punked in the same way? I pulled my head back as a slight form of resistance, but it was of no use. The man's hand enveloped my neck and began to crush it like a vice. It was less about the pain of not being able to breathe, so much as it was choking so hard I felt like I was going to throw up. It felt like my stomach was going to turn itself inside out. Honestly, there's a non-zero chance that Toshiki is going to clutch up here somehow. Right? I don't know. That kid's brave. He might. But I could only endure it. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. My throat hurts. won't let go. I can't let go. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to resolve this and go back to Tokyo. Go back to Tokyo and talk to Yuki. All about our unborn child. We were going to talk about our bright future. I had no intention of loosening my grip. However, it loosened just a bit, and the man's leg came free. The man kicked as hard as possible, and I tumbled backwards. My head was spinning, and I was unable to get up right away. No, I couldn't even put any strength into getting up in the first place. Even so, I couldn't back down. If I let him escape now, this chance would never come again. Even just catching their scent was nothing short of a miracle. If we weren't able to get the minister's grandson back here, there wouldn't be another chance. The man tried to drag the boy to his feet, but the kid was displaying some unexpected resistance, allowing me to get up unnoticed. I grasped the rock he had just beat me over the head with. Now it's my turn. The rock should be able to supplement what meager strength I had left, adding more than enough power to my attack. My fist, still wrapped around the rock, dug into the side of the man's torso. It seemed like it hurt him quite a bit. The man rolled around for a bit, clutching his side. Freed from the man's grip, the boy hid behind me.
Inukai Toshiki-kunだね。君を助けに来た。
To the boy, those were the words he was waiting for the most. But the crisis was still not over. That was because even though he was still clutching at his side, the man had gotten up again and had taken a fighting stance. I could see in the man's eyes the resentment at the pain I had caused him, and the confidence that he could still beat me. Dude, he probably can. This dude, like, bashed your head in. Like, you probably have no strength left. If I were to clash head-on again, he might not even stop if my head were split open.
これ以上抵抗するな。おとなしく降参しろ。てめえこそ小僧をこっちへよこすんだ。首の骨をへし折られていか。誰が貴様の言いなりになどなるものか。もうじき応援が到着する。貴様らに逃げ場などない。
The man reacted adversely to the word reinforcements. That was because he knew now that arguing like this wasn't just a waste of time, but put him closer and closer to danger. Realizing that, the man shifted mental gears almost too quickly.
なら手っ取り早く済ませるぜ。こいつならどうだよ。
What the man pulled from his back pocket was, of all things, a gun. Dude. Shocker that the Yakuza kidnappers have guns. Of course, I'm a police officer. It's not like I don't know what a gun is, but having one pointed at me was something I'd never experienced before. Was it real? Of course it was. There's no way to be a replica in a situation like this.
おとなしく両手を頭の上で組んで、そこにうつ伏せになるんだよ。図に乗るな悪党。誰がお前に従うか。クソバカが。
He's about to get blammed.
撃たれなきゃこいつの恐ろしさがわからねえかよ。なら撃ってみろ。貴様の忠誠で応援がここに駆けつけるぞ。バカが森の中で、しかもこの雨だぞ。銃声などかき消える。
He does have a point. As long as he still held that gun, no matter how much I yelled at him, I was at a distinct disadvantage. But I still had a fighting chance. If I were in his shoes, instead of wasting time yelling at each other like this, I would just shoot him and take the boy. That was the fastest and would suppress any sort of further resistance from him. But the man was demanding my surrender without having fired a shot, meaning that he either didn't want to shoot or couldn't. In other words, the man in front of me was soft. Oh, he called him soft. That's crazy. He said, yeah, he's kind of weak. He's not built for this. If I could buy even just a little bit more time, the factors that would lead to my victory were numerous. Oishi was probably on his way, and the reinforcements we called for before coming here should already be well on their way too. Reinforcements? Maybe. Oishi? No, there's not a shot. Not only that, they should have contacted the local police box. Without a doubt, somebody stationed in the village would be here much quicker than that.
クソったれが撃たれなきゃこいつの怖さがわからねえかよ。どうせ逃げられやしない。無駄に罪を重ねるな。
At that moment, I heard the rustling of foliage and heavy footsteps approaching. You're about to get slumped, boy. If Oishi was coming here, it was a whole new ballgame. There's zero shot. It would be awesome, but I mean, as a reader, we have very good reason to believe that it isn't Oishi. The man couldn't have more than one gun.
Oi-san!
It's not Oishi. I thought that time was on my side, but I had failed to even imagine that the enemy could also have reinforcements. You could tell the man who had just appeared was one of the perpetrators just by looking at him.
何しよっての。はよせんとな。警官来るんで。なん油うっとんしゃん。
くそ、大石さんはどうしたってんだ。
ああ、あんの樽男かい。落としたったら泡吹いとんよ。
大石さんが。くそ。
The boy, sensitive to the impending danger, curled up behind my back. How could this be? Damn it!
期待してた相方は来ないってよ。ざまあねえぞ。観念するのはてめえの方だ。
As I backed up against a large tree while still protecting the boy, the second man also pulled out a gun.
2回しか言わんね。頭抱えてそこにうつ伏せになるんよ。
Look, I'm just gonna say it. At least we're kind of soft for this. They kind of got whooped.
断る!
Bang, he got blammed. As I shouted in protest, blood erupted from my left shoulder. It took a few moments to register that I had been shot. Compared to the ones from in movies and TV dramas, the first actual gunshot I heard was simple and mundane. In fact, the sound was more akin to the small fireworks I used to buy from the corner store as a kid. There was no comparing the pain. It was a fear you knew only after you'd been shot. The boy, in his confusion, tugged at my clothes, agitating the wound even further. I wanted to put on a bold face and reassure him, but my voice was hoarse and had the opposite effect. Yeah, no.
すでに応援は要請してあるんだ。すぐに警官隊が駆けつけてくれる。
警官が来る前に、お前ん額にもっぱつくれちゃる方が早いんだ。無駄な殺生すなっちゅう、本家に言われとんか加減しとん。あんまりなめとんと、容赦せんとよ。
This was bad. It was very, very bad. This second man was a completely different beast than the first. He had no signs of indecisiveness or mercy. If this man said he'd shoot, he'd shoot. He wasn't somebody that a man like me could buy time from. I really hated to admit it, but at that moment the image of Yuki's smiling face crossed the back of my mind. I knew what that meant. I was warning myself to not throw my life away over a matter of pride. Of course I didn't want to die here. I was just starting a new life with Yuki. I wanted to see the face of our soon-to-be-born child. Why should I risk my life for some minister's grandson when I was at such a critical juncture in my own life? Ugh. Damn it! I need to stop rambling at myself. So what do I do now? Give up the boy and extend my own life? What a good idea. Everybody's life is precious. My own life was in danger. Nobody would blame me. God damn it, it hurts. If I had known it would be this painful, I wouldn't have played the tough guy. My biggest miscalculation, though, was that the sound of the gunshot was far quieter than I had imagined. It was only that loud, it would be drowned out by the rain in the forest. It wasn't something that somebody far away could hear.
待ってくれよ。死にたくないよ。
あん、こっちだって死なせとうない。分かればええん、分かれば。
撃つなよ。帰りを待ってる妻がいるんだ。死にたくないんだよ。
叫ばんとでも歌んね。おとなしゅう頭抱えてうつ伏せになったら歌んだるね。
They both got punked, bro.
本当だろうな。約束は守れよ。絶対だぞ。男と男の約束だぞ。
守ったんだ。男と男の約束しやよ。
Is he like getting him off his guard and like I don't know.
守れよ。じゃあうつ伏せになるからな。約束守るんだから。銃を向けるのやめろよ。やっぱ撃つ気なんだろ。俺がうつ伏せになったら後頭部を撃つ気なんだろ。
歌んね。わーった。しまってる。銃はしまってる。
Oh, he might be.
男と男の約束しやね。
He might be catching him slipping.
どんね。これなら文句ないんて。ね
え、極めて文句ないですよ。
Oh man, I hope Oishi is not gonna hesitate himself. Oh shoot, he rocked him. It was over in a flash. The moment he lowered his gun, Oishi didn't let his chance slip by. I guess he must have seen him out of the corner of his eye. Oishi had been assessing the situation for quite some time from behind the two men, but since they had their guns trained on me, he didn't really have a chance to jump in. Seeing the look on Oishi's face indicating that he wanted me to create an opening, I took on that role completely. Oishi forcefully lifted the arm that was holding the gun. He then took the gun from the man's hand in only an instant. The other man, who was a bit slow in grasping what was happening, pointed his gun at them, but with his ally grappling with Oishi, he couldn't pull the trigger. If that man was the one that was wrestling with Oishi at the moment, he might have shot without hesitation. But this man wouldn't shoot. He couldn't shoot. Oishi kicked the other man away, and while aiming the stolen gun with his left hand, pulled out his own. Dang! Yo! He said, bro, this man went full Red Dead Redemption on him. What? With guns akimbo, he was aiming at both men at the same time. Okay. I lied. Okay. I said they got punked. They might be cold. They might be nice with it. Maybe. It's not over yet. It was perfectly played, but heedless of the guns pointed at them, the men shouted "Scram!" as they scattered away at full speed. It was over in an instant. Is he gonna pull the triggers? Those two running away without putting up a fight was honestly unexpected. Oishi, quietly clicking his tongue in admonishment, slipped both guns into his pants pockets. Well, I'll give him that. They got the kid and didn't even have to let loose a shot.
あいつらもよく知ってるな。
何をですか？
逃げてる背中を警官は撃てませんからね。
Yeah, I guess that's fair. The moment they're fleeing, that would just be gunning down a civilian. I thought we were about to see Oishi go full dirty cop, though. I'm not gonna lie. I thought he was just gonna gun him down.
私も退職金が惜しいもんで。
Oishi and I grinned at each other.
君が犬飼俊樹君？犬飼検察大臣のお孫さん？
はい。
これはでかい事件になるかな？どうせトカゲの尻尾切りになるんでしょうけどね。
Yeah, that's an apt analogy. Just gonna grow right back. Oishi smiled amusedly. The fact that the Onigafuchi Guardians, or rather, the Sonozaki family behind them, was pulling the strings was apparent, but proving it wouldn't be easy. And, with apologies to Oishi, this incident was unlikely to go public. If this caused an uproar, it would obviously lead to the minister losing his office. With HQ having decided that doing so was in the national interest, this would probably be cleaned up quietly. It might be a rough way of saying it, but this was born in the shadows, and was going to die in the shadows. Oishi probably already understood the implications behind this incident.
とにかく非常線を張らせましょう。連中まだ一丁は拳銃を持ってるようですからね。
Yeah.
それから犬飼君を保護して赤坂さんはすぐに病院に行かないと。
As the tension in the situation faded, the pain from the gunshot wound in my shoulder blossomed once again. My forehead was also stinging painfully and had grown hot enough to start a fire. Yeah, bro kinda got whooped. He took a beating. I mean, he tanked it, I guess. Thinking that the tension had caused me to sweat, I wiped my forehead, but what came off was a large amount of blood. I realized that my shirt had been stained bright crimson from the blood flowing from my head. I turned around. The boy was safe and sound. Without a doubt. There would probably be an investigation on the men who ran, but that was for another day. At this point in time, I could safely say we had cleared the major hurdle of securing the boy's safety. He's about to pass out. As soon as I recognized that, it felt like the lights in my head had been hit by a power failure. My knees buckled from underneath me, the ground there feeling as soft as a cloud. It didn't feel unpleasant even as I was covered in the rain-soaked mud. Oishi came closer, asking if I was okay, but somehow I couldn't tell. I turned off the switch to the last light in my head. The exhaustion enveloped me. Sleep. Something softer than any blanket wrapped around me. I mean, we know he's not gonna die, but like... that's probably it for the episode, though. Okay. I mean, that's like the big event we've been kind of waiting for. Oh, there's only one tip this time around. Alright, so let's just view that tip. And then... Oh, wait. Why is that popping up? I specifically disabled those. I guess something's up with my Steam overlay. It's not supposed to be on in Higurashi. I'll need to change that later. I guess that explains why so many names were popping up for no reason. Let's view tips. It's fine for now. A very kind person. Patients admitted to the hospital can only accept calls at fixed times. That's why she wouldn't be receiving a call from him today. Yesterday, she had teased him that he got lonely easily, so he might have struggled with the idea of calling her sooner. It was much easier to imagine, rather than he just might be too busy to call, because he's just that type of person. Yuki, whispering that, smiled to herself. The announcement that visiting hours were over played over the hospital intercom along with some music. She exchanged pleasantries with the family of the patient that was staying in the same room as her. Probably eager for his mother to be discharged, her small child was wearing a beaming smile. The child's mother was pregnant in the bed next to mine with what may be their new brother or sister. They were probably ready to burst with the expectations, dreams, and worries of having a new sibling. The joys of a growing family. Bathing in those warm feelings, I stroked my own belly, which had grown quite large. I talked with him about how many children we wanted to have. We talked about how if we had 3, it would certainly be lively. However, there was the inescapable worry of whether I'd be able to handle giving birth that many times. I mean, that is completely fair. Like, you know, obviously, I have never given birth. But by all indications, by everything I've heard, it is not a pleasant experience.
でもそんなことを不安に思って出産を嫌う母なんて いないですものね。
Yuki, smiling as she said that to herself, gently stroked her stomach. The Metropolitan Public Safety Division, the place where the man's sense of justice had led him. That person was actually a very gentle, very fragile person. He didn't talk much about the specifics, but I didn't think he was suited for the assignment he was on right now. Dude, maybe. Might harden him, though. Realistically, he just got shot, and he got his head beat in. Right? Bro either needs to change his career, or that's gonna harden him, right? Like, it's one of the two. But as long as he said he was going to try his best, I would watch over him warmly.
あなたのお父さんはね、とっても頑張り屋さんなのよ。こちょこちょこちょこちょ。
Yuki seemed to be enjoying herself as she talked to her own belly. At that moment, Yuki suddenly became concerned about something and looked out the window. It used to be this time, long ago. She remembered that when she was little, around this time in the countryside where her grandmother lived, the Higurashi would fill the air with their chorus. This was the middle of Tokyo. Unlike in the countryside, you couldn't hear the song of the Higurashi. But for some reason, at that moment, Yuki felt that she wanted to hear that song. Yuki just wants to go back to her old country life. That's what it sounds like to me. I don't know that that tip was super important. It just kind of gave us a little bit more insight into the relationship of Yuki and Akasaka, and possibly like shows that she wants to go back to the country where she's originally from. I don't know. There's a small part of me that reminds me of the Ryugu family who left Hinamizawa and went back, but there's no way that they're the Ryugus. There's actually just no shot. The timelines do not even come close to matching up. So, same with any character I know, because that was one of the first things that popped in my head is what if the baby's someone we know? But it's they'd be 7 years old, dude. There's literally no way, right? It wouldn't even be 7, right? They'd be no, I'm right. They would have been 5. It would have been 5, dude. There is not. We don't know a 5-year-old. I don't think, right? Not to my knowledge, right? So I don't think that it's anybody we would know, right? Admittedly, I don't actually know if they've said anything about whether I don't think they've said anything that would indicate they have another kid. I'd have to maybe look, but technically maybe there's an older kid. Right, but there's no way I wouldn't know that by now, right? They could be deliberately hiding that, but really, I think this is most likely not a super relevant tip. But I'll consider the possibility, probably note that Yuki wants to return to the countryside. Maybe it's relevant, I don't know. Let's talk about this episode itself, though. This episode was, kind of self-explanatory, right? We get the wallet, and it's pretty clear proof where Toshiki Inukai is. We call for backup, confirm that it's the Onigatsuchi Guardians that are involved in this. And we go to investigate where that wallet was found. Along the way, we run into Rika, who has seen that we're still here, right? Despite warning us, right? We're still here, and so that, I don't know, it probably will come up if I had to bet, right? I'm sure this will come up. We continue along, and we finally reach the place, and we run into Irie, right? And we're like, that's not right. Why is he coming from that direction, right? There aren't any houses over there. So that's how they find where, how they find where he is. And so ultimately, Toshiki's gambit, it paid off, right? I don't think it paid off in the way he had intended it to, because Irie did not tell us a thing, right? He did not tell us a thing, right? And so I don't know how that went, right? I kind of wonder. I'm kind of wondering if there's anything to the idea that that Irie is an accomplice. I don't know. Would he have said something if he wasn't? right? Like, would he have told us? Like, yo, there's a kid locked in a shed over there. You might want to do something about that. I mean, but the truth of it is that he didn't, right? And that's not a good look for him, right? Really not a good look for Irie. But just the mere presence of Irie and him leaving, right? That was Toshiki's gambit, and it worked. And so obviously we get into that fight. They really did not want to let loose their guns, and I'm gonna be honest, there were many points where I really thought they should have just let loose their guns. You know, when it looked pretty clear that Oishi was about to get whooped. In all fairness, I don't know. He would need to be, you know, like, he would need to be a proper gunslinger, right? In the scenario where it looked like he was losing. They both had guns on them, so I guess I can't really fault them for not, you know? Let's just say, honestly though, I don't know. If I were in the same spot, I can say this while looking at a work of fiction, like, you probably just should have shot this guy, right? That would have ended this whole struggle a lot quicker without you getting your skull bashed in and without you getting shot, right? In the case of Akasaka, right? Like, if you had just shot bro, yeah, that would have worked, right? But, like, it's probably a lot easier to say that in fiction, right? You know, if you don't think you need to let loose your gun, like, you shouldn't, right? And I do, like, genuinely just believe that in general. And I guess he truly believed he didn't need to, and the moment he probably thought he needed to, it was like he had two pointed at him, and I'm like, brother, you're not Arthur Morgan. Like, you're not winning that. Like, so I do agree at that point you just, like, give up. But he saw Oishi, who had somehow recovered. I don't know, maybe he faked getting knocked out, right? Or he just woke up that quick. Whatever Oishi did there, is that suspicious? Is it suspicious that Oishi was actually getting choked out and was somehow fine? I don't know. I don't know that I should be super sus of that, but it's another one of those things where it's like, I don't know, there's reasonable... I think it's kind of reasonable to doubt Oishi a little bit. I really, like, after that scene, I was ready to be like, no. You know, he's all good, right? He wouldn't have done that. And I'm like, that's true. But again, it could be one of those things where it's like kind of an elaborate ruse. And it's like, really, the question is just, I need to know, how did Oishi get out of that, right? Because from what we saw of his perspective, there was no way, right? It makes me wonder if he was somehow like, yo, do you know who I am? I know that the Sonozaki family ordered this release, right? We're just going to do this in a way where none of us are going to die. You give me the kid. I look good, and we continue working together. I'm not saying it was that, but it could have been something like that, right? Because I don't know how Oishi wins from that spot without letting loose a gun, which he didn't, right? He didn't shoot. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too doubtful, but, like, maybe I'm too tunnel visioned on the fact that I'm doubting Oishi, but I almost feel like I was blinded to, like, how did he get out of that? Right? I don't know. Maybe he just had some super secret pretend to be knocked out because this guy doesn't want to kill me and he's not going to finish the job. Maybe that was his goal. Pretend to be knocked out. Bro leaves. Bro waits until, or like Oishi waits until the kidnapper was gone and then gets up and flanks, right? It was a masterful flank. I can't deny it. But I don't know. Like Akasaka said, everything has felt so perfect, right? Sure, he got his skull bashed in a bit. He got shot. But that went pretty well, all things considered, right? They got the kid. They got out, right? No one died. Not a single shot was let loose, right? That's about as perfect as that situation gets, right? It doesn't get too much better than that without capturing them, right? And honestly, the fact that they got away like that is almost, I don't want to say more suspicious. Like Oishi said, they're police officers. They can't exactly shoot on someone that's running away from them, right? I don't know. Yeah, it's more like, I don't know that this is reasonable. Like, I don't know if this is like a good reason to suspect Oishi, like foul play with Oishi, but like I don't think what he did today really clears any of my doubts. Until I figure out exactly how he got out of this situation. And it needs to be believable, right? It needs to make perfect sense, right? I don't know. But point is, Toshiki Inukai has been rescued. That was the goal. And unfortunately, I think it's pretty likely that we're not, or like Akasaka's not just going to get to leave Hinamizawa, mainly because he mentioned that he was here for 3 days, right? Wait, how long has it been? How long has he been here? The tour and the informant were the same night, so he's been here for 2 days. I think he's going to be here for another full day, right? So I think we got probably 1 to 2 more chapters of him in Hinamizawa. I don't think they're just going to cut it off here after like what happened with Rika seeing him. I feel like there's going to be a little more. I feel like they're going to meet up. They're going to secure everyone around him, and then some crazy thing is going to happen with Akasaka there. Maybe while he's in the hospital, maybe shortly after he gets out, they need him to like keep investigating, and things go awry. And I think the last, or maybe another chapter or 2 after that, I don't really know. But I think after that last day, we're then going to jump to 7 years in the future and talk to Oishi and see what's going on there, why he felt the need to visit Oishi. Because you got to remember, that's like why, like this is all basically like a flashback, right? As he remembers everything that happened in Hinamizawa while he's on his way to meet with Oishi again. So I suspect that's what's going to happen here. So we're going to record another one, possibly 2 tomorrow. I got 2 more days of recording before I am leaving. So we got to kind of move. I got to at least get through probably the entirety of the final day in Hinamizawa tomorrow. So yeah, that'll be all for now. This was a big episode, right? This was a big episode, like plot wise, right? I like seriously, like, I mean, that's a major development. We rescued Inukai, and I really want to see where we're gonna get from here, right? Because like, it's not over. We know that the damn murder hasn't happened yet, right? And I can't believe that somehow slipped my mind until now, right? That still hasn't happened. That's the crazy event that's probably about to happen, right? Maybe with the grandson saved, right? The construction foreman or the construction minister is gonna like weasel his way out of whatever he was doing, right? Because they've got no leverage anymore, and so instead they're just gonna kill the foreman, like as a threat. Maybe that's what it'll be. I don't know. I think there's still like the very real chance that there is foul play involved there, but I think we'll just get to that when we get to that. Today was a big episode. I honestly didn't really expect that this is how today's episode would go. I don't really know what I expected, but it wasn't. I didn't really expect Toshiki Inukai to be rescued already. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I know we've got plenty of bangers coming, right? Like incoming in these, like for me in these next 2 days, we got plenty of great stuff to see. So I am looking forward to viewing it all. I hope you guys are as well. And until that next episode releases, peace.